We're talking about equity that was used to pass down through generations and inheritance, equity that was used to pay for kids' college, for weddings, for all type of life events, right? Medical emergencies, things that are going down as well. For a lot of people out there, their home is often their greatest asset, right? And so these decisions and things are not just kind of one-off items that are kind of happening in the vacuum and only really impact one individual area of your life. You're talking about something that impacts all parts and all facets of what is going on in your world. Welcome to the Home Goals Podcast, the ultimate guide for turning your home goals into a reality. I'm your host, Derek Thornton. Join us as we navigate the twists and turns of obtaining a home. We'll be offering expert tips, helping you avoid pitfalls, and championing your journey towards that cherished place to call home. In this week's episode, we'll take some time to talk about the history of Black home ownership in this country, with it being Black History Month, and also with this episode airing coincidentally on President's Day. I wanted to also take a moment to tie in and talk about the way that the role of presidency has really impacted home ownership in this country, for good or for bad, right? There have been both in either direction or either situation. So I wanted to take some time to talk about what got us to where we are now, the progress that's been made, the obstacles that have been overcome, and the issues that we're still dealing with today. Now, if I wanted to, I could do a long, extensive study for years and years and even a century back. But I just wanted to kind of highlight a few things that have happened over the years that have kind of gotten us to where we are now, and why it's still important for us to remember our history. Remember, those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it. So it's important for us to not only have an accurate understanding of our history, but to really understand what got us to where we are right now. And so one of the first things, even looking back to the abolition of slavery, right? You figure Abraham Lincoln was in play, and the laws that he enacted, or the plans that he had to abolish slavery, when he got rid of slavery and then was ultimately assassinated after that particular Civil War had taken place, there were a lot of things that he had promised to the slaves or who were going to be set free, right? Because you have millions of people in this country who were enslaved, and they were all going to be set free after this Civil War, and you knew you couldn't just set them free and not give them any type of help or assistance. Just say, hey, you're free to go. And it's like, well, free to go where? And so they had to come up with plans to help get those slaves who were newly freed back on their feet. And in the wake of Abraham Lincoln's death, there were still people who were in office who were trying to help get them to a place where they could be able to stand on their own feet and have the support they needed, right? And they weren't asking for handouts or just asking to kind of kick their feet up and just relax with that. They still wanted to work, right? That's one of the common notions or misconceptions, is that people like who are in these difficult financial binds or situations, they just don't want to work, or they're just too lazy to kind of get it done. No, they wanted land. That was when the representatives came to them and asked what they wanted, they said, hey, we would love land to be able to provide for our families, to be able to take care of our loved ones. That's what we want, right? We don't want just a simple handout that's going to be gone and who knows how long. We want land to be able to afford to do what we want to do and be able to make a living for ourselves. As we've said it on the show before, right? Buy land, they're not making it anymore, right? So there's only a finite amount of that resource, and that was the most valuable thing that the newly freed slaves wanted to have when they got out of that situation. And after that issue happened, Andrew Johnson, the president, came in and revoked that plan for giving them land. They had made a plan to give the land that was originally owned by Southerners, right? They were going to give that land to the slaves to help them get on their feet, right? And so that was where the whole 40 acres and a mule plan came from, right? It was like, hey, we're going to give you this land to be able to provide and set up and make a living for yourselves. Andrew Johnson came in as president, revoked that plan, and then it was a difficult time for them. Many of the slaves were having to go back to their owners or back to their previous masters and sharecrop on the lands or make some arrangements and stuff too, because they just had nowhere to go. Right. So then you fast forward all the way through the short period of Reconstruction and leading all up into the Civil Rights Movement. And they're just constantly fighting and being met with resistance at every land. Right. You have the Jim Crow laws, separate but equal. They've got neighborhoods now that are walled off where it's basically a whites only. Right. You've got all these different parts and sections of the town that are segregated, and they're not able to purchase homes in those areas. Their kids aren't able to go to certain schools. They aren't able to get certain resources, certain things that they would like to have that were everyday part of life for most people. Black citizens did not have access to that, right? And one of the things that they were really fighting for was, again, the American dream, the right to have housing. And when the Great Recession happened in the 1920s, like 1920s leading into the 1930s, it was difficult times for everyone in the country. And Franklin Roosevelt, FDR, he stepped in and was looking for a way to kind of stimulate the economy. He knew everyone was in dire straits. They needed something to kind of boost the economy to bring that up. And so he developed a plan. He, along with many in his cabinet and the Congress as well, they all developed this plan called the New Deal. And it basically was a plan that was put in place to offer all types of incentives and opportunities to American citizens to help them get back on their feet. And one of those things that was very important to this plan, or crucial to making this work, is the ability to help Americans with home ownership. And so they developed what was called, or what is still called, the Federal Housing Administration. That was something that came directly out of the New Deal. You might have heard of it. It's called FHA is the acronym for it. We hear about it all the time now with loan types and stuff like that as well too. And so it is a organization that is very much still in existence, still in play, and it came about as a result of the New Deal. It was something that came in to try to help subsidize some of the initial housing cost that homeowners were having to take on to be able to even afford to buy a home, right? It was like, hey, you can get help with your down payment, or you can get a lower interest rate or something like that too. And so it was put in place to help provide the resources that homeowners needed to help get them in a house, right? And so that was something that was put in play. The only problem is that this was only reserved for white American citizens. It was clearly stipulated in there that black citizens were not given these same rights, not given these same opportunities. They were not giving the loan types, the down payments, all those things that were put in place to intentionally help pull people up and give them a helping hand. Those same benefits were not offered to black individuals. And that's where we first started to see what we call redlining, right? Where there would be certain areas or neighborhoods that banking institutions or lenders would not even offer a loan for houses that were in traditionally black subdivisions or neighborhoods, right? And so you became a very definitive line was drawn in the sand in regard to home ownership. And there were all these people who were given help and assistance to be able to get into homes that obviously grew in value, grew in equity over the years, and gave them, or those white citizens, an unfair advantage. We're talking about equity that was used to pass down through generations and inheritance, equity that was used to pay for kids' college, for weddings, for all type of life events, right? Medical emergencies, things that are going down as well. For a lot of people out there, their home is often their greatest asset, right? And so these decisions and things are not just kind of one-off items that are kind of happening in the vacuum and only really impact one individual area of your life. You're talking about something that impacts all parts and all facets of what is going on in your world. A lot of that all comes down to where you live, what home you own, if you even own a home, right? And so these were all kinds of opportunities and decisions that were taken directly out of the hands of black citizens. And you had the U.S. government actively working against their right to be able to own land. And again, these are things that are just further handicapping the black citizens' ability to be able to really get ahead, to really enjoy any part of the American dream, even after other concessions have been made, right? You'd figure like there were always people who said, well, okay, well, slavery is over, so you don't have anything to complain about. Or the civil rights movement has made a bunch of changes that have happened so that you don't have to worry about that anymore. We still very much have to worry about all of the damage, the collateral damage that happened as a result of those decisions that is still being felt even today. Right? So that's what you had coming out of the Great Depression, the New Deal and all that the government was actively doing to work against that. And then you lead up into the 60s with the civil rights movement, where you had Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was just one of many civil rights leaders out there who were fighting for us to have the same rights that every other citizen in America had as well, being able to own homes in whatever area we wanted to own homes, to be able to have our kids go to the best schools, have all these resources and things made available to us. That's what they were fighting for. And Martin Luther King Jr. just happened to be one that became kind of almost the poster child in a sense for the civil rights movement. But there were many people who were actively involved in helping those things in all different areas of the country, at all different levels of government. We were fighting hard and tremendously to make that happen. And in the later years of Martin Luther King's life, before he was assassinated, he had been working tremendously hard with some of the presidents as well, with JFK and with some of the other presidents, to try and get some fair housing rights into play, right, as well. Like, they were working very hard to make sure that fair housing was something that was a part of the Civil Rights Act, right? Like, they were able to slowly get certain concessions, right? It was like, hey, we finally got the right to vote and the right to own, but there was still a ton of discrimination happening, specifically in housing. And unfortunately, even in the realtor industry, right? If I look far enough back in our own history, there were plenty of situations. There were times where the realtors were specifically outlawed from being able to help black families from owning homes in majority white neighborhoods, right? So again, you had people who were in this very profession who were actively working against black home ownership in many cases, and also working alongside the government, right? So again, you had just so many forces that were pushing and fighting back against that right and that ability. And unfortunately, it took, I hate to say this, but it's really no other way around seeing why it changed so quickly. But they were just getting met with resistance constantly. And even in the later years of Martin Luther King's life, his approval ratings were just abysmal. Like, he was getting just constant criticism and critiques from both sides, right? From his own people and even from white citizens as well, too. And he was really struggling to make headwinds or make progress. And a lot of what he was fighting for was starting to fall on deaf ears. And that fair housing law that had been going through Congress, it just kept getting held up, kept getting delayed. There was no progress that was happening on it. And it really looked like it was just going to just fizzle out and cease to exist, and we'll be right back where we were all over again. And after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, there was a tremendous outcry in the communities as a direct result, right? It was a pivotal moment in this nation's history, just like the assassination of JFK, just like Abraham Lincoln. It was a groundbreaking watershed moment where it really forced us to look and see, okay, what can we do? What can we do to make sure that this does not become who we are, right? This is not who we are as a nation. And as a result, one of the first things that President Lyndon Johnson did in the wake of Martin Luther King's death was that he pushed the fair housing law through Congress, and it passed in record time. That law that had just been sitting, going back and forth, they couldn't make any progress. A week after his death, after MLK's death, that Fair Housing Act of 1968 was passed. And I hate to say it, but I almost feel as if his death was the only reason that it happened in the first place. And that was a law that made it illegal for people to discriminate for housing with for sale or for rent, right? And so it gave another groundbreaking win for Black home ownership, right, and an opportunity for it. Now, unfortunately, even as you fast forward to today, there are still countless situations of blatant discrimination still taking place in many cases, even though it's been outlawed and there's certain steps and things that have been taken in place. Again, it's hard to change human interaction and humans in the way that they have their own biases and everything that goes on as well, right? We were seeing, even as recently as a few years ago, you saw the Bank of America scandal where they had to pay a settlement because they had been actively discriminating against certain homeowners based in certain neighborhoods as well, and kind of almost, in a sense, modern day redlining. We see situations where in 2018, when they did the Long Island investigation and found that there were realtors up there who were actively discriminating based on who walked into their office, right? If a white client and a black person walked into their office with the same income, same credit score, same background, same everything, they were still treated differently, and they were steered in different directions or told to move to certain neighborhoods, right? We're still seeing those things happening even today. And unfortunately, when you look back at the home ownership rate back in the 1960s when the Fair Housing Act was passed, the Black home ownership rate was right around 40% at that time. Fast forward to the early 2000s when we saw like the resurgence and the boom of everyone being able to purchase houses, it got all the way up to 50%. Which is the highest that it's ever been. The Black home ownership rate in this country got all the way up to 50%. And then the Great Recession happened. That wiped out a ton of progress, and that pulled us all the way back down to like 43%. And that's kind of where we've been hovering even today, almost 20 years later from that Great Recession that happened, right? And so again, it's always almost a one step forward, two steps back type of ordeal, where it's just kind of like every time there's a little bit of progress made, something comes and wipes away that progress as well. And you don't want it to be situations where an assassination or a Great Depression event needs to happen in order for some progress to take place, right? We don't want to reach that point. We want to be able to come together and figure out how we can find ways to proactively fix this and make it better. Because again, it's not just a situation or a problem that is happening in a vacuum. These are problems that are impacting every single facet of an individual's life, right? Like where you live, your volatility in being able to find a place to live, we have the data, we see the stats, we can see how that directly impacts a child's ability to learn, to develop, to grow, to have better opportunities when they become an adult. A lot of that is tied around into not only where they live, but the quality of life that they have where they live. And so, again, this is not a problem that is only reserved for Black individuals, right? These are things that are impacting the way all of us live and interact, right? Having the opportunities, having the skills, the talent level to make sure that we are all living in thriving communities. And so those are just one of the things that I wanted to take into consideration, again, with this President's Day and also Black History Month. I wanted to take some time to kind of walk through the history of just some key points in our history that have led us to where we are now, and why there's still so much progress to be done. Why I still do this podcast is really to just talk through those things and help us all come to a general understanding. And so I hope that you all find that helpful. Again, I'm always pushing and fighting for us to have better rights, better opportunities for everyone, not just for Black individuals, not just for white individuals, but for us all to have those opportunities. And I think it comes from us first being able to acknowledge those problems. Hopefully you all have a wonderful day. Happy President's Day, and more importantly, happy Black History Month. Have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you next time.